Thank you for being here. So I'm so excited to be here tonight with three people that I love very dearly and friends of mine that I love very dearly. These are some of my favorite writers as well, so it's just an honor for me to get to introduce the event tonight. Spokane Public Library has partnered with the Spokane Tribe of Indians to create this following land acknowledgement. All Spokane Public Library buildings sit on the traditional homelands of the four bands of the Spokane Tribe of Indians: the Upper Band, Middle Band, Lower Band, and Chewelah Band. Since time immemorial, the Spokane Tribe of Indians has lived and cared for these grounds, identifying themselves as Squilics, or flesh of the earth. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We show gratitude to the land, river, and peoples who have been fishing, hunting, harvesting, and gathering here for generations. May we learn from one another's stories so that we may nurture the relationship of the people of the Spokane Tribe to all those who share this land. My name is Sharma Shields, and I'm the Writing Education Specialist here at Spokane Public Library. Thank you so much to all of you for being here tonight to celebrate Washington State Book Award recipient Kate Lebo. And to celebrate her wonderful book, The Book of Difficult Fruit. Kate is a writer and friend I admire so much, and this is a much-deserved honor for this incredible book. This event is co-sponsored with the Washington Center for the Book, which is an affiliate of the Library of Congress Center of the Book, and administered by Washington State Library. We are streaming this event live, and I apologize for the camera not working. We have been working on this for 3 days. It was working an hour ago. I don't know what happened. I apologize. But hopefully you'll be able to hear the great readings tonight. And you are watching this live on our Spokane Public Library YouTube channel. So thank you to those of us who are joining us in that way. And thank you to all of you here tonight. Thank you also to Wishing Tree Books, where I used to work. Janelle is here. She's a wonderful, independent, woman-run bookstore here in town, and Janelle is amazing. So please buy books from her tonight. So this is how today's event is going to happen. We've got these three outstanding, award-winning, vastly published, lauded Washington State writers with us tonight. And that is Chelsea Martin. We have Maya Jewel Zeller here with us tonight, and the wonderful Kate Lebo. Kate is going to introduce both of these writers, and then Maya, who is awesome at intros, will introduce Kate. So please welcome the Book of Difficult Fruit author and the winner of the 2022 Washington State Book Award, Kate Lebo.
Thank you, Sharma. Have fun at Lou's graduation. Sharma can't be in two places at once. Her daughter is ascending to the higher spheres of education. So have fun. Good luck, Lou. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for this celebration. I was buoyed up and held and helped by so many writers in this community and other communities across Washington. I really I have mentors in Bellingham. I have mentors and friends in Bellingham and Seattle. I'm from Vancouver, Washington. My home is Spokane, and where this book really took root is in Spokane. And there's so many writers I have to thank for their influence and their encouragement, but particularly Chelsea and Maya. So thank you so much for reading for me or with me tonight. Okay, I want to introduce Chelsea. Chelsea Martin's first novel, Tell Me I'm an Artist, came out in September 2022, and it was great. Her previous books include Caca Dolce, which is one of my favorite collections of essays, Even Though I Don't Miss You, and a bunch of others, including a bunch of rad zines. She and her husband run the Spokane Zine Fest, which just happened a couple weeks ago, and is one of the highlights of the year. She lives here with her family. One of the things, there's many things I admire about Chelsea's writing, but one of the things that I keep coming back to, particularly in Caca Dolce, is just that that's a voice that I want to follow, that I will listen to tell me anything. And it's rare to find that, and I was so excited that I found it in my friend. She's been really precious to me because we both had kids around the same time. We're trying to figure out how the heck do you be an artist and a mom, and it's not totally clear any particular day, but we're doing it, right? Anyway, welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for inviting me to celebrate your book with you. I love the Book of Difficult Fruit, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm gonna read something I've been working on lately. There is no obituary for my first boyfriend that I can find, no details about his death, just generic condolences and a notice for a drum circle in his honor at a public park. It's been a few years since his death, but I'm looking for the first time. Some lady inherited his phone number and therefore his Facebook account, and goes online to beg his bereaved Facebook friends for advice on how to disconnect the phone number from the profile. Nobody gives good advice about the issue, nor roast her very well. The last post he wrote before death was about waking from sleep and hearing sirens and wondering if he'd had a seizure, if the sirens were for him. I want to forget how I saw every individual strand in the carpet under Casper when I thought he was dying. How every single strand was sharp and poised, trying to rip into my flesh to distract me from saving my child. His breath, either imperceptible or absent, maybe mine too. I don't know, the carpet was vibrating. I want to understand why I threw my phone across the room when I meant to call 911. But my therapist dropped my insurance because there was always some payment processing issue, and she didn't need the hassle. I see a picture of Casper's brain and think, how much Lord Farquaad is in there? But it is not for me to know. It's an appropriate-looking brain, we are told, all good. Do you want to take a picture on your phone, the neurologist said. I do want the photo, but instead I sit motionless, say nothing. I feel like it's been this moment for like 400,000 moments. My therapist, before she dropped my insurance, said I should come up with a happy place to imagine myself when things get difficult. And the first thing I thought of was the Facebook support group for the noxious weed creeping bellflower. In the Facebook support group for creeping bellflower, there are always new photos of large tubers pulled from the ground in triumph. Frustrated descriptions of the plant surviving every trauma inflicted upon it. Complaints of the plant spreading everywhere despite great pains to prevent it. It pops up in new areas, grows under cement pads, disguises itself as violets, threatens to suffocate all other plants. Users describe sautéing the tubers in butter and feeding it to their families as a desperate way to feel they have some control. Be at peace with the fact that you'll never get rid of it, an absolutely demented user comments. The idea that life stuff leads to other life stuff and it's all part of life, I don't like that. And furthermore, I feel entitled to information about my boyfriend's seizures, my first boyfriend's seizures. Give me his medical record. The neurologist doesn't want us to do keto, but we insist. We want to deprive Casper's little body of carbs and replace the calories with fat, so that his body is forced into ketosis. I've learned about this on the Facebook support group for parents with kids with epilepsy, which the neurologist keeps condescendingly calling a blog. He refers us to a dietitian who doesn't think adding fat is a necessary part of this diet. I do think some of this is funny. Googling zoodles is objectively funny. Googling zoodles, how do I cook them, because I still don't get it. Ravenously eating raw zoodles with nothing on them because it takes me so long to figure out how to work the zoodle maker. Straight up losing friends because I can't stop working zoodles into every conversation. Blue cheese, walnut, arugula, chaffles. Casper has a seizure in Costco and I get flustered and buy the wrong kind of mozzarella. I'm not losing friends because of zoodles. I don't feel any obligation to be truthful. I'm losing friends because constant fear and helplessness makes me feel withdrawn and alienated, even from those who most love me. I thought I was going to write a novel about an alien takeover dystopia with a protagonist who pays no attention to the unfolding alien drama because she is single, and it makes her really sad. But instead, I'm writing this. I can't sleep. I'm thinking, how many grams of fat are in olive oil? I'm Googling, what is fiber? What is fat? Does meat fat has protein? I try to think of every Chris I've ever known, starting from kindergarten. I complete this task and then move on to Nick, then take a Xanax. Ian said I'm more mothering than I think I am, and his only example was that I first became obsessed with creeping bellflower when my sister had her birth trauma, because it caused my own unprocessed birth trauma to resurface. Oh, have I not mentioned all the birth trauma? It's too late to be a different kind of person. I crumple and uncrumple myself like an old piece of wax paper. I take Casper to do his monthly labs, and the phlebotomist has to run numbers to make sure she can take so much blood from such a little person. The numbers take a very long time. Casper wants to know why there is an image of Cat in the Hat in the top corner of a Berenstain Bears book, and I do my best to explain cross-brand promotion. Says thank you to the phlebotomist once he stops crying. Do you think they're going to raise the debt ceiling? William texts. If I was the protagonist of my alien dystopia novel, I would tell William, I don't know, I don't care, that it doesn't make any material difference to me, and that I haven't heard anything about it. But it is me in this world, so I quick make up an opinion that I now don't remember. I think about the word precipice a lot. I think about the word trajectory. One day, I will stumble to my death, and it will be like it always been there in front of me. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chelsea. Okay, next we have Maya Jewel Zeller. Maya is the author most recently of Outtakes Glove Box, which was chosen by Eduardo Corral as the winner of the New American Poetry Prize and is coming this fall. So we'll be having a party for that in the fall, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Her memoir manuscript, Raised by Ferns, was runner-up in the AWP Sue Silverman Prize for Creative Nonfiction. Maya is associate professor at Central Washington University, a totally kick-ass teacher, by the way, if you're trying to figure out where to go for undergrad and you want to write. And affiliate faculty in poetry and nature writing in the low residency MFA at Western Colorado University. So if you're looking for an MFA, she's got you covered too. I really wanted to invite Maya to read for this particular reading too, because the way that she interacts with and lives with and just has relationships with the plant world, I think changed the way that I was having relationships with the plant world. And she didn't do it in this kind of way of giving advice that I wasn't asking for, or being evangelical about, arrowleaf balsam root. She just knew the names of things and was friendly with them and kind of showed me her easy way of being. And I'm so grateful. And I'm also grateful that I used to be able to call her with a complete mess of a draft that I didn't know what it was about and read it to her, and then she would tell me what it was about. And that is above and beyond. Thank you. Incredible editorial service.
I wish we could still do that.
Right?
I wish we had those moments.
We gotta write another book. I guess. Anyway, okay, here comes Maya.
Kate, I love her. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I am so thrilled for Kate, and I think everybody in Washington and beyond in the world should read the Book of Difficult Fruit. It's just such a brilliant book. It taught me so much about writing, and I'll say more about that when I introduce her. I'm going to read half of a brief essay that I wrote while Kate was working on Difficult Fruit, and that's why I chose this one. It's a received poetic form. It's an essay that's a repurposed sestina. Does anyone know what a sestina is? Cool, we're gonna learn. Thank you. Yeah, you know. Okay, so you're gonna learn a little bit about it during the essay, because I talk about it during the essay. So I'll just say a sestina just at the outset so you know. There's 6 words, and they're repeated in a poem. And they're repeated in this essay, but this is an essay, not a poem. So instead of stanzas or verse paragraphs, it has sections. And each section is like a stanza. So, okay. And I'm just gonna read 3 of the sections. Sestina for foragers. 1. Among the things we ate from the forests and ditches, fields and brambles, and rivers beyond were salmon berries, red hucks, lambsweed, blackberries, 3 varieties, Himalayan, evergreen, wild trailing, salmon, stolen jam from restaurant baskets, stolen half and half from restaurant baskets, stolen ketchup packets from fast food bins, pumpkins and zucchini wildly overgrown in the gardens, taking over like Europeans, like those who came on boats and planes and clinging and vining and winding their way across the land. We never called it foraging. Those who eat by necessity what's wild and or found, collage eating, just call it food. Foraging is a word rich people use, or people who've chosen to live off Mother Earth to embark on a journey the way that people enjoy thrifting, when you shop used clothing stores for the novelty or because it's cool. When you have to shop thrift, there's nothing cool about it. It's just clothes. I didn't know the word foraging until I was in graduate school, when one day a friend said, "Do you want to go foraging for mushrooms this weekend?" In my head, I thought, finding food in the woods? Like, do I want to go back to the most basic of needs? I believed there was some privilege in simplicity. I wasn't anti-work, it's just that it was emotionally complicated for me. I could go to the store now, I could pay. Also, I didn't know my edible mushrooms, I knew only my psychedelic. I passed. Later, when I led a public writing workshop on plants, noting offhandedly that, oh, and you can eat it, it's high in vitamin C, about nettle or mint or rose hips, I don't remember, a participant crooned excitedly, "Ooh, have you read that book by blank blank about foraging? You can find so much that's edible in the wild. We should all be thinking about what we can eat right outside our doorsteps." And I almost barfed in my mouth. She was right. We should eat what grows for free. And she was right. We can find so much. A constellation of produce is everywhere. But I didn't like her implication that we should all be thinking, implying that none of us were thinking about it, that we'd all been raised on Hot Pockets or Pop-Tarts, or even that we saw fresh produce as something we could pay a lot of money for at the farmer's market. Fresh produce was always under our noses if we had the privilege of living where the dirt wasn't covered in concrete. It wasn't a mystery, it wasn't exotic. 2, a train of thought is mysterious and many-speared, like a star or a sestina. In the field of poetry, a sestina is all about repurposing. In an incantatory pattern, a repeated set of 6 end words in 6 sestets, so that's 6-line stanzas, and 1 tercet envoy, so 3-line stanza. The last containing 3 lines, but all 6 words, some folded into the middle of the stanza. It's complicated, but if you take the 6 end words and then you weave them, they repeat in a pattern that kind of weaves it together, and if you map it, it looks like a star, and I'm about to do. If you map the pattern, it has a web of 6 sides. I wish I had the diagram actually to show you. Frances Mays, in her book on the pleasures of poetry, writes, "When the sestina was first used in the early 12th century, the numerology of the 6s probably had a mystical meaning that is lost to us now. While what is still fascinating on inspection of the form is that each end word is positioned next to every other end word twice in that poem. If we make a hexagon of end words called A, B, C, D, E, F, and connect each end word as it touches all the other end words in every stanza, we see that the poem is indeed graphically complete." Does the sestina work to show you how eating what's in season extends throughout a life, how it departs and returns, like the mythos of memories? Where I live now, in the inland Northwest, the huckleberries are blue and grow wild on the mountain, among the beargrass and the tamarack. The air smells of pollen and lichen and alpenglow. We take our children picking in mid-July and early August, teaching them how to be foragers, to eat what's in front of them, and back home to make it sweet with flour and sugar and cream. They dream up an unrhymed chant about how the plant grows only in its own soil. It's true. If you try to domesticate it, it dies. Like you, they say, like you. A mystery and a rule, like foraging. Something we do when we are a little wild inside, not because we want to be, but it's because it's who we are. 3, my friend, writing a book of difficult fruit, asks me one day to go with her into the woods on the Olympic Peninsula, north of my childhood watersheds, but climate-wise fairly congruent. She says, "Let's go berry hunting." And I agree. Walking in the woods, what some call hiking, is one of my favorite things. "I hate hiking," she tells me, laughing. "But I want to know the plants that produce the fruit." She's honoring every fruit about which she writes, thoughtfully approaching each as ethnography, as lenses into, alongside cultures, as she interviews folks, tromps through the woods, though she doesn't enjoy it, builds or watches others build fires with folks who live in rural areas, and pours through history, lore, etc. for each chapter and recipe she writes. She's being a star researcher. I admire and respect her approach. So when she asks me after our tromp through the woods, during which I note for her the differences between the wild trailing native blackberries and the 2 invasive varieties, if she can interview me about my childhood relationship to thimbleberries, I say yes. Unless you're in the woods with me, I don't always talk about my childhood spent eating what I could find in the forest all day, grazing until it was time to go home for dinner. Later, my friend and I sit in a restaurant when she visits me to review her progress, to ask about thimbleberries, and the irony of the restaurant booth isn't lost on me. My whole adulthood feels, in some ways, ironic. She is wearing an orange rust hat she knitted herself. She has domestic skills. I used to have those skills, embroidery, sewing, scratch-made noodles, but now I spend all my time reading other people's writing and not writing my own things. I don't even consistently remember to feed the birds anymore. My friend's questions are her form of foraging for what's edible. I tell her we're all doing this, scavenging and foraging after the floods. But we don't call it that, we just call it being alive, working. Still, I take some cue from her. I begin asking questions, scavenging my past for details, for patterns to repeat. So that essay is kind of dedicated to Kate, and you can read the rest of it on Guest House. It has 4 more sections. But now I have the great honor and pleasure of introducing Kate Lebo. So I'm going to say a few things about her that kind of echo the essay and what she said too. And also, I want to thank again the libraries for hosting this event. I know Sharma had to take off, but for anyone who's streaming online, let's just say libraries are amazing. Can we give one more round of applause for libraries? And also Chelsea, I love that piece. So, okay, introducing Kate Lebo. Kate Lebo, forager, researcher, friend, who honestly inspired me with her writing of difficult fruit to do my own farming, seeding, and weaving again, and was part of the team of people who encouraged me, who was writing poetry or not writing at all, to write prose in the first place. Maybe she has done this for you as well. Anyone who has spent time with Kate knows she fosters having access to your own mind again. She doesn't just inquire like a journalist, though she does this too. She also digs into your brain flesh with a glitter-pointed pen. She excavates and she organizes. And she does this with her own writing at every stage. I had the great honor of reading some of these essays while they were in process and of listening to others aloud. Kate takes feedback seriously. Once, while I drove the 180 miles from my house to my day job, Kate read me an essay over the phone. Another day, I had terrible reception and little time, so she recorded the entirety of Ume so that I could listen, make notes, and then call her back, which I did, and we had a long conversation. It was great. Like any writer balancing having it all, she knows what it means to squeeze in her creative labor. She's hungry for intellect, and she works her ass off for her writing. That's why when Kate won the Washington State Book Award, I honestly cried. I sobbed. This is a woman who, can I say these words on live stream, earned the crap out of that award. The Book of Difficult Fruit, as you know, works through its received linked form. When Kate was writing, she played with that abecedarian as a structure to help generate, and then to revise and shape. And each of the essays started out with 26 parts, and then she wove them together into the abecedarian that's the book. It's really brilliant. Like how fruit is given structure by its plant and how it is both generation and rot. This book teaches us as we read it. Many of the essays are about meaning making and patterning and offer recipes to follow as writers and as readers. This is a writer's book, but it is also a book that will make a writer begin. It interrogates colonialism and complicity in syntax that belongs to a poet. It offers reference and attention to details. It is never faking it. It holds a beautiful balance of the eye that sees, right, and the eye that is, a trademark of Kate's work, in my opinion, that makes her writing lyric and docu-poetic and moving as a human artifact. And this book has garnered accolades that recognize its importance. The Book of Difficult Fruit won the Washington State Book Award for Creative Nonfiction in 2022 and was also shortlisted for the PNBA Award and was named a Best Book of the Year by NPR, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Electric Literature, and the Globe and Mail. Kate is also the author of the cookbook Pie School, which I think you can get over here, the former edition, which will be re-released on August 1st, so you can probably pre-order it, with all new recipes, and the poetry chapbook 7 Prayers to Kathy McMorris Rogers, for which local venue The Bartlett hosted a reading and Lisa Brown fundraiser several years ago. This is one of the things that I most admire about Kate. She's a whole person, present in her communities. She brought us food tonight, she's probably gonna talk about that, and constantly balancing how to live an intentional life as an art monster with how to make the world around her better, with essays, political insight, or pie. Please help me welcome Kate Lebo.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for coming already. I want to thank you again. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Maya, for that incredible introduction. I also want to thank the Spokane Public Library. Thanks for hosting us. We love the Liberty Park Library. We're here every couple of weeks with our kid right over there. Thank you, Washington Center, for the book. If any of you in this room are interested in doing any kind of research at all, the Washington State Library and the librarians at the Washington State Library in Olympia are incredible, and you can contact them via email, via phone, ask them a question. They will go nuts, and they will send you all sorts of resources. It's amazing. I wish I would have known about that when I was researching this, but now I'm hooked. And I will use them for my next book, absolutely. So anyway, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read my C chapter, which is cherry. So in case you didn't already know, this is an abecedarian. It means it goes from A to Z. I've got a chapter for every single letter of the English alphabet. As you can imagine, by the time I'd written 15 of these chapters, I wish I'd chosen a shorter alphabet. 26 is a lot, but hey, it worked out. It worked out. Something that's really important to me about these essays is the way that they braid many kinds of knowing and literary forms with non-literary forms. So there's stuff I'm stealing from the way that cookbooks communicate, and there's stuff that I'm stealing from the way that memoirs communicate, and poems, and vice versa, and just trying to weave them all together to see what we get, see if we can further our understanding about our relationship with these foods. It's going to be cherry season soon. I think July 4th is usually when they're ripe around here. So let's do this one. C, cherry. My mother's sister died of breast cancer when she was 34 and I was 8. I thought she'd caught the disease from eating maraschino cherries and hot dogs, a belief no one corrected because I never said it out loud. Eventually, in time that passed too quietly or too gradually to notice, I stopped believing she died from processed food. At no time did I stop eating maraschino cherries. This was, in a way, like smoking would be later, an abstract poison whose intake, because it had not yet killed me, made me immortal. The story is often told this way. The maraschino cherry, as we know it, was invented at Oregon State University during Prohibition to garnish virgin cocktails. Real maraschino cherries were historically a Croatian delicacy made of marasca cherries, a sour variety that's still grown and prized today. True maraschino liqueur is distilled from marascas and their crushed pits, then combined with cane syrup and aged. Imitation maraschinos have been made in the United States since the turn of the century with a variety of non-alcoholic brines. In the 1920s, East Coast maraschino manufacturers ignored Oregon's and Washington's crops because their Queen Anne variety went to mush when preserved. Enter OSU's Cherry Whiz. After years of experiments, Professor Ernest Wiegand discovered that adding calcium salts to cherry brine keeps cherries plump. After 1940, the FDA decided it was lawful to call imitation non-alcoholic maraschino cherries just plain maraschino cherries, in recognition that U.S. consumers by now assumed maraschinos were, as they are described by the FDA today, cherries which had been dyed red, impregnated with sugar, and flavored with oil of bitter almonds or a similar flavor. Modern maraschinos are bleached, preserved in a variation on Wiegand's sweet brine, and dyed with FD&C Red 40, a food coloring that has been accused of triggering ADHD in children. No study has conclusively proved that link. In the United States, we usually derive bitter almond oil needed to make maraschinos from apricot kernels, not bitter almonds, unless we produce the flavor synthetically in a lab. True bitter almonds have higher concentrations of the chemical that creates almond flavor, amygdalin, than apricot pits do. But bitter almonds are harder to find and illegal to retail in the States because of their toxicity. But I'm pretty sure I found a bag of them at that, was it Lorien Herbs, the herbal store in the Perry with the windmill on it? Yeah, I think you can get some there. So that's our secret. Everyone who's listening. Some chefs I've known further clutter the nomenclature by calling apricot kernels bitter almonds, which is what I now call the kernels I saved from last summer's harvest and stored next to my nutmegs. The pits of cherries, plums, and peaches contain amygdalin too, though in smaller concentrations, which means their almond flavor is not as strong. It remains common for cherry pie recipes to recommend a teaspoon of pure, real, or imitation almond extract to gesture toward the bittersweet flavor of cherry pits without risking their potential poison. Amygdalin is perhaps better known to some audiences as laetrile or B17, notorious as a quack cure for cancer. At no time did my aunt consider amygdalin a possible cure, though evidence-based medicine didn't save her either. Reports vary on how many bitter almonds one could enjoy before regretting that choice. When amygdalin reacts with stomach acid, it splits into a non-toxic almond flavor called benzaldehyde and poisonous hydrogen cyanide, also known as prussic acid. A healthy human body can ingest small amounts of cyanide without ill effects, but higher amounts over time are poisonous. Toxicity depends on how large a person is, how healthy, and how concentrated the amygdalin content of the bitter almond. When I eat bitter almond products, all made from stone fruit kernels, not from true bitter almonds, and so slightly less dangerous, I do not eat them casually unless they've been baked. I'd prefer to eat persipan, which is a paste made from crushed apricot kernels and sugar that tastes bitter and satisfying, like dark chocolate, by the spoonful, but I eat it by the knife point instead. I do not serve the almond extract I make from crushed cherry pits raw to children, or serve it in quantities to adults as if it were amaretto, but I do add it in small amounts to pies. An advisory on these treats seems only right. Some friends blanch at the flavors they're about to experience, fearful of cyanide, no matter how small the dose. To flavor jams, pies, and baked goods with stone fruit pits, most recipe writers recommend blanching the kernels to be on the safe side. Others insist that blanching does nothing but degrade flavor, that the boiling point of water is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and hydrocyanic acid does not dissipate below 354.2 degrees Fahrenheit, so the kernels must be roasted instead. This is how malib, a Mediterranean spice, is made. When crushed and sprinkled over pastries, it tastes like marzipan, but taken straight from the spice jar, it tastes first like pine nuts and then like bitter wood. By kernels, I mean the nut-shaped lump you'll find if you smash the stone of a stone fruit. Beneath the kernel's wood-patterned skin is a white heart full of flavor. Cherry kernels are bead-sized and hard to extract whole from the crushed shell after the hammer's done its work, but this is just an aesthetic problem. To remove the skin, blanch the kernel in boiling water for 10 seconds. Let it cool for a moment and squeeze it between your index finger and thumb until the skin slips free. Then, if you're feeling brave, eat it. In the house where I lived my last year with W, our neighbor's sour cherry tree grew over the fence, which made it half ours no matter what she said. During a year of normal weather, the cherries would ripen the week of 4th of July. There was a 5-day window when I could pick them and they'd be good. After that, they'd darken and soften and fall all over the back deck. Fallen cherries attracted birds, which attracted my cat, who was named after a cleaning tool, Swiffer, because he looked like the business end of a mop. He would attack and eat the birds and leave their feet and beaks by the door for us. This became, in our household, the spoils of midsummer. One night, drunk out of his mind, one of W's friends chopped his own cherry tree down. It happened a week after his Independence Day barbecue, when we had been sitting under that tree, drinking beer and picking the sweet rainiers hovering just above our heads. He did not compare himself to George Washington. Had he done so, I would not have felt any less like he'd just strangled his dog. They made such a mess, he said. W and I had cherry trees in our backyard too, overgrown Bing trees that bore sweet fruit, or fruit that would have been sweet if we had been able to reach it. The nameless cherries from the tree next door were far more neighborly, brushing our shoulders as we leaned against the back of deck's railing, dense and sour and no good raw, no kind of quick treat for the picker. They made great pie. At the time, I was learning my way around a pie plate. Baking seemed like a way to be powerful but non-threatening. A confrontation with sugar was a fight I knew how to win. In addition to picking fruit and rolling crust, becoming a pie lady meant imitating a knowing voice when writing down practices I'd just learned from a cookbook or made up on the fly because I hadn't bought real equipment. The imperative mood was essential. In the absence of a genuine cherry pitter, the pointy end of a chopstick will do. Press the tip into the pit at the cherry's bottom, opposite the stem end. When the pit eases loose, drag it out by the stem. Discard the stems and save the pits. You can use them and the kernels within them to make almond-flavored simple syrup, vinegar, cream infusions, and jams. I made those serving recommendations years before I made the foods I recommended. What mattered then was the gesture of knowing, practicing how it would sound. For some of us, this is how recipe writing starts. We try on the voice of the cook who knows, offer likely answers, and build authority from there. The best cherry pie recipe is a simple one. When fruit is high quality, our job is to preserve its natural virtues. Start with 5 cups of sour cherries, 1 cup of white sugar, a teaspoon of cherry kernel extract, salt, and instant tapioca. Mixed and poured into a double crust that's been glazed with egg white, dusted with coarse sugar, then baked in a hot oven. A thin layer of persipan spread over the bottom crust before adding the cherry filling adds a twinge of danger to this otherwise conventional dessert, or it could. I haven't tried making cherry pie with persipan yet, but now that I've written that, I will. I have made cherry pie with persipan since then. It's really good. In my new neighborhood, a family down the block has flawless sour cherries on their fence line, but for some reason does not pick the fruit. Oh, this part takes place in Spokane, by the way. This is one of the first neighbor interactions I ever had when I moved here. Sam and I decided to ask if we could pick those cherries. An old woman answered the door. Her husband had planted the trees years ago. He was dead now. "I'll make you a pie," I said to her daughter, who translated my offer into Russian. In the foyer, a little boy was sprawled on his stomach, flushed and asleep on the bench where we would have taken off our shoes had we been invited in. "You don't mean to make her a pie," her daughter said, "but you can pick the cherries." My cut-off shorts kept riding up as I moved. Her eyes followed my hand as I grabbed the cloth and pulled it down. When we came back the next week, the cherries were perfect, too perfect, ready to fall and falling all over the sidewalk. We rang the doorbell to say hello. A new daughter appeared. Her mother didn't remember us. The daughter wanted us to go away, but would not say so. "I'm going to make you a pie," I said to the old woman. "No, not necessary," the new daughter said. "Really, I don't mind," I said. "Maybe we can exchange recipes." The women did not scowl, but they did not smile either. "Wash the cherries before you eat them," the daughter warned. "They've been sprayed." While we picked, the boy who'd been sleeping last time ran out of the house with his sister and joined us beneath the trees. "Do you like cherries?" I asked the little girl. She refused to say. She grabbed a cherry from the dirt and threw it at her brother. A man in a suit pulled up in a minivan and said something in Russian that made them go inside and come back out with nicer clothes on. The rest of the family emerged from the house, dressed for church. "I'll bring the pie next week," I said as they passed by. The man smiled, the daughter scowled, the mother ignored us. They drove off. The following week, our neighbor erected a chain link fence around her trees. Branches still arched over the ugly metal, dropping all the cherries we had not picked onto the sidewalk. They rotted there. The birds ate them. We smeared them beneath our shoes, and we tracked them home. The mess was appalling. She didn't want a pie, I told myself. I didn't make her one. One argument made on the third round of cocktails by an employee of an international fruit company to which I once sold my image, voice, and recipes is that this company, which might otherwise support legislation for GMO labeling, was instead against it for fear that clear labeling would also have to list the naturally occurring chemicals in non-GMO produce. The public would see the arsenic, the solanine, the cyanide, and become terrified of fruit. Oxalic acid, for example, is found in buckwheat, spinach, and sorrel, and rhubarb. Rhubarb recipes often warn to stay away from the leaves because they contain poisonous amounts of oxalic acid, but they never mention that rhubarb leaves taste terrible, which mitigates the danger of accidentally eating a dangerous number of them. According to Bon Appetit, a 130-pound woman would need to get past the taste of 10 bitter pounds of rhubarb leaves to have an adverse reaction, which could include burning mouth and throat, nausea and vomiting, diarrhea, cardiovascular failure, coma, and death. If we can't blame maraschino cherries for my aunt's cancer, what should we blame? TV waves? Anxiety? Rage? 3 years after she died, when I was 11, my mother took me to the pediatrician so I could show her my right nipple, which had swollen unnaturally larger than my left. I was terrified I had breast cancer. Sure, I was next. It was puberty. Not cancer, Mom remembers, but I thought you would feel better if a doctor said it. Years after my aunt died tragically young, but not from eating maraschino cherries. Years after I left W and our fruit trees, I started a new July ritual. Make maraschino cherries the old-fashioned way, free of food coloring and calcium salts, preserved for cocktails year-round. I start with 4 or 5 pounds of fresh sour cherries and use a real cherry pitter now, a contraption that screws onto a standard canning jar and catches the pits. Sam and I drink Manhattans while we pit, served his favorite way, on the rocks with the previous year's maraschino cherries, never citrus. I combine the pitted cherries with a bottle of Luxardo maraschino liqueur and heat them briefly, because I read somewhere that I'm supposed to do that. Then I seal them in jars with some of the pits to add a dash of benzaldehyde charm. Over the rest of July and part of August, the maraschino's candy red will fade to a serious mauve. That's how we know they're ready. Globes of liqueur-logged fruit, the taste of what they once held safe at their centers. Summer glow and fair warning, true cherry and almost almond. The promise and poison from deep in their seeds. Thank you.